Welcome to Flashlight 101. This is a technology that has, expanded exponentially since the days of, 20, 30 years ago with our mag-lights. And we're going to tell you all about it. First off, this was an awesome request from a friend and a sponsor here at the channel, so happy to get someone down the rabbit hole. Here we go. So, back in the day, your mag-lights, they were pretty much what every firefighter, LEO, military, that's what they used. This was the top of the line back in the day, all right? So, these things, let's look at some current specs. These are pulled off the website as of today, which means they are like actual current, best, even LED technology over the old incandescent bulbs that were in there. But best case scenario, even today, in a 2-cell D battery, these things are putting out 27 lumens, okay? You go up in batteries and you can get all the way up to 178 lumens with a 6D cell battery unit, but that's like the size, that's going to be bigger than your arm, you know what I mean? So that's what we're talking about. These things back in the day, less than 100 lumens, but they were honking huge, so they served double purpose of being like something you could defend yourself with too. So, but then in the early 2000s, massive, revolutions. You had LEDs, powerful LEDs, or more powerful than these, I should say, the mag-lights, ended up coming out. They kept the same kind of aesthetic and like size because, why not? That's the standard. But it's like, this is so light, it's not as useful for those same, reasons. And, they could start shrinking these, especially as battery size started to improve, right? So even though these cells are the same size as the AA's from back in the day, they're way more powerful. So what you see is batteries no longer use the C and the D cells. That's ancient history nowadays. So this one's like, I don't know, 15, maybe even budget on. Yeah, probably about 15 years old. And that one is, 536 lumens, I think it was. So then we see more developments, and the technology again skyrockets over the next 10 years. Surefire and Streamlight were some of the best brands you could get. And these things, as you can see, are beat all to heck because I used them a ton. This was my EDC for many years. Let's talk about batteries, right? We talked about how the C and the Ds were gone. Now we're to more efficient A setups, and now the batteries in this period, or if you still get off the shelf entry level stuff, then they're going to use probably CR123s. These were actually developed sometime around the 90s, I think, for camera flashes. So they needed a small battery that would fit in your camera, but give you a really high output for a high intensity camera flash. So again, that technology was continued onto flashlights. So that's why you see some of those there. Then you get into, we start to see the rechargeable worlds come in. And once you get into the rechargeable world, it is way cheaper and more versatile. And these rechargeable batteries, you get a couple hundred recharges out of them, and they're anywhere from, $3 all the way up to maybe 15, $20, depending on who you're getting it from and where you're shipping it from, yada, yada. But individually, they're very inexpensive for the amount of use that you're getting out of it. Then you advance in the last 10 or so years to the enthusiast world. These are all Noctagon or MSRs made by pretty much the same guy known as Hank. That you might hear these called Hank lights because he does both of those brands. And these are insanely customizable hot rods, but they have their pros and cons. Before we get to that, Flashlight 101, let's bring you up to speed on some terms. So lumens are basically your output, and this is your total amount of light that you are emitting, abbreviated LM. A candela, and basically what that is it's a focused beam. It will, at 1 candela, illuminate a 1 meter by 1 meter box. That's basically a measurement of like how focused that light is. But this is kind of an older term. You don't really see candela anymore because there's other factors at play here that we'll talk about later. Reflectors, optics, different emitters. So anyway, back to our basics. How many lumens do I need? Anywhere from 1 to 300 is great for reading everyday stuff. 300 to 900 is nightly walks, runs, and camping. This is off the Nightcore site, by the way. 1000 to 1300 lumens is like mechanics or more focused work lights. 12 to 2,500, they say, is hunting, law enforcement, or military, and 3,000 plus is search and rescue. So basically, what does that mean? So for everyday life, you really only need like less than 1,000 lumens, especially in a focused flashlight. If you have more than that on indoors or anything like that, it's going to bounce back and actually kind of cause you night blindness. So you have to be careful once you pass that 1,000 lumens in terms of how it's focused, how you use it. So now you know about lumens and kind of that's basic intensity of light. Now we're going to talk about color, okay? You might hear color in Kelvin or K. This is an astronomical table used in, astrophysics, things like that, to describe the color of a star and a star's temperature, basically. So the different temperature of stars have different colors, you know what I mean? So these are the colors of the stars, and that's what has been adopted to the colors of light. So when you hear people talk about Kelvin, you're basically talking about 1,000 Kelvin all the way up to 10,000 Kelvin. 1,000 is this red, and then you see orange, yellowish into kind of daylight right about here. 57K or so is daylight as we see it. And then, it goes on up, and we got more blue as we ascend the scale. When you hear Kelvin, that's what they're referring to, either cool white light or warm light. Past that, you've also got the color rendering index. And basically what this is how washed out colors look. Certain lights, even at the same intensity and the same Kelvin rating, could be a lower CRI light. And that basically results in things looking kind of more washed out as opposed to more bright and vivid, showing their actual colors. So you might find lights as low as, 70 in the enthusiast market, all the way up to 95 or higher even. So yeah, that's what CRI is. Then you can talk about emitters, right? So these are the actual LEDs in the flashlight. You could have, a variety of different brands, different Kelvins, all sorts of different, lumens, all sorts of different things. If you don't know anything and you're just jumping into the enthusiast market, an easy, solid recommend is the W2. That is very popular, it's very efficient, and it's very bright. When you get into doming versus de-doming, that's something that's applied on top of the LED making the light. And basically, if you de-dome a light, the overall lumens goes down a little bit. However, the beam becomes usually a little bit more focused. That's why you're doing this mod. And the Kelvin also drops about 300 to 400, I think it was, Kelvin, when you de-dome a unit. So all that you can take into consideration. If you have a bigger flashlight, right, so this one here is this model here with 4 LEDs on the inside. When you get into a bigger model that only, hosts one brighter, more powerful LED, you can get a variety of different LEDs there too, right? So these are the emitters. When people talk about emitters, that's the actual LED that's actually giving you your light. This one I highlighted here, the SBT 90.2, because that is basically the hot rod. This emitter itself costs $50. Most, some others are free, others are like 10 or $15. This emitter itself is like the most intense individual unit as far as output and lumens that you can get. So that's its own hot rod, and that's what this one is right here. Well, this is that SBT 90 in a different unit. The one pictured here is actually this one. It's a thrower, but we'll talk about that. You've got throw versus flood. A light with a really tight hot spot has more throw versus a light that's more flood has, more general illumination, but you won't see as far away. So you can kind of, lean either way in that spectrum of more towards a thrower, a tighter condensed beam that can go farther, or a flood, or like a more generalized spread of light. So you see more unilaterally all around you. However, you can't see quite as far. Now the optics or the reflectors do affect those two things. So this one has a nice reflector. Different ones you've got some different optics. This one is a TIR, which is a different one I'll talk about another day. This one has tiny optics on top of the LEDs. So you have different types of optics that can affect your throw versus your flood, things like that. Let's get into the next thing that really affects this hobby. Batteries. The battery power has also come very, very far, like we talked about, since the early days, and that's another thing that's powering these hot rods of today. So if you get into, nice, even consumer big box store brand ones like this Streamlight, you can still get into rechargeable batteries with them. The difference being, let's take a look at this. In the general consumer world, and in most of the tactical flashlight scenarios, I believe, Phoenix, Olight, Nightcore, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to have protected batteries inside of them versus an unprotected battery of the same size. Now, protected, what does that mean? This actually has a circuitry on it that prevents this thing from overheating and burning itself to the ground and anything else, the flashlight, whatever else is around it. So this is, lithium ion is a potentially dangerous technology. So these batteries are protected. You can use cheap off the shelf battery chargers with these because if the battery charger goes bad or it's just plugged into a battery source, this battery itself will say, nope, I'm not taking any more capacity because I am done. So you can use cheap chargers with these. They're more reliable. And because of, you almost think of this as fluid dynamics. If you were dumping, water out of a milk jug versus a 5-gallon bucket, the 5-gallon bucket goes a lot faster, but it's easier to spill versus the milk jug, which has that tiny exit hole. And that's almost how you can think of this. So basically these ones, the protected ones, because they're protected and what they can input and output, you can actually cram a little bit more energy into it. That's what the mAh is. That's more or less your battery capacity in milliampere hours there. So these ones have higher output input, so they can supply, higher power for a shorter amount of time, but you can't cram quite as much energy into them. So on this side of the world, the general tactical consumer type market, you get more power for your actual battery size generally too in a protected battery. So once you get into the enthusiast market, you need rechargeable batteries that have a smart charger. This is an extra expense, and it's something that you absolutely should have if you're getting into the unprotected batteries, because if you throw this on a regular charger, it could burn your house down. So you need to put this and charge it on an appropriate charger for the enthusiast market, unprotected batteries. This is my personal favorite, a Vapcell S4 Plus fast charger. Most of these will charge anywhere from 1 to 3 amps. The difference might be the size of, the size of batteries it can handle and the number of bays it can do. A lot of them might drop the amperage if you have more than one battery charging. This one actually does 3 amps per bay. So those are kind of the variables there. These things can go for anywhere from 50 to $100 for a decent one, maybe even a little bit cheaper nowadays. But those are something you absolutely should have if you're getting into the enthusiast market. But once you do, it opens up a myriad of different battery sizes. And batteries are cheaper than the protected counterparts. So you can get a bunch of them for way cheaper. I've got like 3 or 4 different size batteries in here, for example. I label them too because I rotate through them. And if one goes bad, then I know to kind of take it out of the rotation. Usually you get a couple hundred uses out of them. But these are only like, 3 to 5, maybe $6 a piece. So it's not for hundreds of uses. That's amazing. So why the enthusiast market? Because you use an unprotected battery, these things are like hot rods. They can draw way more energy and give you way more light for like a turbo burst of power where it's just like, it illuminates the night like nothing else. Now the batteries don't last as long. So, it's a trade-off. But also these things are more programmable. These things have like 30 different settings, you know what I mean? You can ramp up and down, which means you can control the exact specificity of how much light you want. And that's something, most other brands in the other segment only have, high, medium, low, or something to that regard. This one, I think that's like 250 different brightness settings that you can like actually choose between. So it's got that advantage. You can customize these different emitters. What's this one? This one has, 2700K, and then I can go for, then I can go to a pure red light. This is red LEDs only, so this is like a night vision light if you're in the woods too. You've got different, like this is my Hot Rod SBT 90.2. So this thing is the brightest thing. This is that you could pretty much shove in a tiny flashlight like that. Now let's do an awesome capability test, right? So we are going to pair this up. This is the mag-lite upgraded with an LED light. Here we have a mag-lite. Dun, 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 the classic versus my little Hot Rod SBT here, okay? Let's see the difference. I'm actually going to close my eyes here so I don't blind myself looking at it. So this is, look at that, the ramping, by the way. See, now I have a lower light than this thing could. This is either on or off, right? So this thing, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Woo! Wow. I could see that even with my eyes closed. So, you can see we've got less than 100 lumens, 4,500 lumens. So, that's what the enthusiast market can bring you type thing. All right, I hope you've enjoyed our super brief intro and kind of history and bring you up to date on the last 25 years or so of flashlight technology, and kind of gives you a scoop on if you might be interested in getting a nice, one of these more durable lights that might have better longevity without the maximum power. But even these things nowadays, if you're looking at those other brands, like I said, a Phoenix, Olight, Nightcore, they can be pushing even 4,000 lumens, depending on. So they're still, really great options. This is Streamlight. This is, if you're only going to a big box store like Walmart, Cabela's, something like that, if they have Streamlight, that's definitely a brand I can recommend as a entry-level brand. Otherwise, if you're delving deeper into that flashlight world, like I said, you're using Phoenix, Olight, or Nightcore for your better than Streamlight Surefire options. Please do not buy a mag-lite. These things, even though they're still sold, are worthless as far as the technology goes. They have not updated. They keep pumping out the same crap from 25 years ago, so please don't buy a mag-lite anymore. The only reason I keep this around is for, comparison, just because it's a mag-lite. I actually just got rid of this here, my other mag-lite, like I said, the big 4 D-cell one. If you're delving into the world of the enthusiast market, the benefits are way higher output and customizability, but the downfalls are initial costs because you need a specialty charger, you have to invest in the rechargeable batteries of your size. So higher initial cost, better longevity because now you use all rechargeable batteries, so that's way more cheap in the long term, but the higher initial cost. And then the customizability comes into play too, which is amazing because you can choose different emitters, different reflectors, different LEDs, different tints, all sorts of different body styles, right? This is titanium, these ones are aluminum. I've got different lights illuminating the actual buttons there too. So we've got almost infinite customizability. However, you need to know what you're doing when you customize those things and how they affect all the different variables of how that light's going to look. But those are pretty much the factors of what you're getting into when you get into flashlights right now. And let me know if you want to know more about EDC flashlights, or if you're more into throwers, you want to see my ultimate thrower that goes about a mile, or if you are more into flood, you need a greater flood capacity. Speaking of, here's one that does both, right? This one here, I use a flood in a 2700 to illuminate my room for most of my videos. But one thing this does is it also has a built-in thrower and a TIR optic. That's a cooler light, but it's got a much tighter hotspot. So stay tuned for more flashlights, and let me know what you want to know about flashlights. Thanks for watching, guys. And may your journey be ever illuminated.